Imagine that you have to walk 100 feet, but before you can do that, you have to walk half of that distance. Before you walk half of that distance, you need to walk a quarter of it. Before you walk a quarter, you have to walk an eighth. Before an eighth, you have to walk a 16th. And this continues on infinitely, which means that you can't actually ever finish walking that 100 feet. This is known as Zeno's paradox, or one of them. I'm going to be very brutally honest. When I first heard the premise of this paradox, it confused me. Not because I didn't understand the framing, but because I had no idea what the paradox was supposed to be. My brain did not even register what part of it was supposed to trick me. I had to read about it some more before I even understood what was supposed to be confusing about it. With every other paradox I've seen so far, I've at least been able to recognize which part was supposed to be the tricky part. This one was just nothing. That's how weak this so-called paradox actually is. Like many paradoxes, this one is particularly sneaky about language and framing. This particular one of Zeno's paradoxes frames the idea of motion as the task of moving a certain amount of distance. It implies that the act of motion can be broken up into infinitely smaller tasks to the point that it is impossible to achieve motion. This is a subtle trick because it makes people think that moving forward now means accomplishing an infinite number of individual tasks. This can be technically true if you view motion as completely linear and scalable. The actuality of it is that motion does not work like this in reality. Your footsteps fall within a certain range of distance depending on how fast you want to go. I could estimate my footsteps to fall within 2 to 3 feet at a time. So with each step I take, I cover at least 2 feet of distance. Each one of my footsteps is an individual task in the process of moving forward. I cannot infinitely divide my footsteps in half because at a certain point I'm no longer taking a step at all. I would inevitably walk 100 feet regardless of how fast I choose to walk. This would also be the same for something that could be considered more linear in method, like rolling a wheel. A wheel has to roll a minimum amount for us to perceive the forward motion and accurately tell that movement is happening at all, because there has to be a minimum amount of distance covered for each individual roll, so to speak. There can only be a finite amount of individual rolls that the wheel does before it reaches the end goal. At a certain point, you divide the distance of motion to such a degree that it is no longer perceivable. And because it can't be seen or measured, it's no longer counted as motion to begin with. To move is to imply that there is a measurable difference, so there would have to be a minimum amount that anything has to move to count as motion. You can't divide motion infinitely in reality, so this paradox doesn't apply. It is an imagined problem, which seems to be pretty par for the course when it comes to paradoxes.